My earliest career aspiration was to become a medical doctor. I developed that aspiration while I was in secondary school, right? I wanted to become a radiologist specifically. I applied to the University of Benin, but the College of Medicine was disaccredited. While I was working at Unilever, on my way to work, I always passed the Coca-Cola office. And whenever I pass, I always say, this is my next, this is my next place of work. I transitioned from Nestlé to Visa. I spent about a year and some months at Visa. If you ask me what my biggest fear is, it will probably be the fear of stagnation.
Yeah, welcome to How the series.
Yes, my earliest career aspiration was to become a medical doctor. I developed that aspiration while I was in secondary school, right? I wanted to become a radiologist specifically. So went through secondary school, was very privileged to be, among the top of the class and all of that. But when it was time to go to university, I applied to the University of Benin, but the College of Medicine was disaccredited. I remember my elder sister, Ejiro, telling me, do you want to sit at home and wait for another 1 or 2 years until the College of Medicine is re-accredited so you can apply to it? Or do you want to pick an alternative course and apply for it? Because time waits for no one. Do you want to sit at home and your brain gets rusty, you start struggling to pass jam and all of that? So I had to make a decision there and then. I had to choose something else. I chose medical biochemistry. I knew nothing about medical biochemistry before going into it, but I had to. There is this phrase: "Ogoro must jump." So I had to make sure I jump and choose something and forge ahead, basically. So while in school, of course, I went to classes and I studied like every other student. And something pivotal actually happened in school. Yes, it was time for IT, and I went to do my IT at a lab, but it was boring. Wearing a white uh, lab coat all day, taking blood samples, using the microscope. I couldn't imagine the rest of my life like that. I couldn't imagine when I graduate and I say I'm going to work, I'm going into a lab and I'm wearing a lab coat. It was very boring because I like some level of stimulation and excitement, even though I'm introverted. So I began to start thinking of what else can I do? Life after school. As early as 200 level, I was already thinking about life after school. Then another pivotal thing happened. There was this very long strike that happened at Uniben. It took over 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. And during that 6 months was when I really found my passion in marketing. Yes, I used to Google how to make money online a lot. Saw a lot of ebooks that I could buy, saw a lot of courses, but because I didn't have the financial means, there were scams too, mind you, but I didn't have the financial means, so I didn't fall for any of those scams. Yeah, but I learned about marketing, about affiliate marketing, I believe, social media marketing. So I started learning, taking courses, looking for opportunities to practice. I also quickly realized that if I want to build a career in digital marketing is very practical. I need a platform to be able to practice what I am learning, right? And here is where a pivotal opportunity actually came my way. Uh, Another part of my story in school is that I was very active in my student fellowship. I was a member of Baptist Student Fellowship. I served as a librarian at some point, and then I also served as secretary. And serving in the fellowship gave me opportunities to engage with the alumni of the fellowship. And one of those alumni, his name is Idehai Benito Oserogo. Shout out to you. Thank you very much for your impact in my life. He He's a gospel artist as well. And we were in a session one day, he was talking about his vision for his career as a gospel artist. You know, how that he will sing to nations, he will minister to nations. Very big dreams. And I was caught up in those dreams. And I quickly identified a gap that he had at that point in time. He didn't have a social media presence. He didn't have a digital presence. And here was I learning about digital marketing and looking for an opportunity to bring my learning to life, right? I offered to volunteer for him. I didn't have any motive to make money, even though I'm the same person searching for how to make money online. I volunteered to build his Facebook page, to create content for him on social media, tag a lot of people, make it go viral. And when he heard my pitch, and after one or two engagements, he told me, Rukevwe, what you're about to do for me is very valuable. It's of high value. I want you to see the value in what you are doing. And because I want you to see the value in what you're doing, I'm going to pay you. And this is the amount I'm going to pay you. And voila, that was my first marketing job, right? So I continued doing that whilst learning. And then at some point, I had to go to Abuja to serve in youth service. While I was there too, National Youth Service is for 1 year, right? I brought the same life after NYSC thinking again, right? I didn't want to wait till I finish NYSC before I start applying for jobs, before I start looking for opportunities. I've heard so many negative stories of people struggling after, NYSC. I didn't want that to be my story at all. So very earlier on, as a youth corper, I already started applying for jobs. I already started seeking out opportunities. And one thing led to the other. I found a company in Abuja and I started working for them part-time, right? But after spending some time in Abuja, finishing NYSC, I continued working at the same company. I quickly realized that Abuja was not the place for me to build my marketing career. I had a mentor. I have a mentor rather. Her name is Rukevwe, CEO of Ziza Digital. Shout out to you. She told me, Rukevwe, if you really want to build a marketing career, Lagos is the place to be. In Lagos, all the marketing agencies are here, all the big clients are here, and you can build a thriving career. So I took her word and I started looking out for opportunities. One important thing I've also done in my journey up onto this stage was to build a presence on LinkedIn, engage, share posts, and all of that. And I was discovered by my first manager in Lagos on LinkedIn. Her name is Jane Ivure. Shout out to you. So Jane contacted me. She wanted me to recommend someone else to her for a role she was hiring, but the person I'd recommended wasn't interested. So she told me, you know what? Why don't you give it a shot? And I said, okay. I'll give it a shot. Here's my CV. And the next thing, I was being called to come and interview in Lagos. I really doubted myself. I felt I wasn't good enough for the role because the role was positioned as a general manager role. And I had only just graduated and finished youth service. But Jane saw so much potential in me that the role was redesigned to suit my level of expertise and still give me a very good remuneration, right? So when I came to Lagos and started working with Jane, working in the organization, that was when I really sat down to start thinking about the future of my career, the kinds of organizations where I want to work. One important learning I'd received from my mentor, Agbons Igewe, at that point was that working in the consumer goods space was a very strong way to build my foundation in marketing, working in the consumer goods space and also working in the marketing agency. So I intentionally started looking out for opportunities in marketing agencies as well as in the consumer goods space. So from my first job in Lagos, I found an opportunity in a marketing agency. But before spending up to 3 months, I got my first role with Heineken. It was a tough decision to make because I just started a new role. Why am I leaving that role to Heineken? But I made that decision knowing fully well my longer term strategy, right? The kinds of organizations I was really, really eyeing the consumer goods organizations. And when you think consumer goods, the classic consumer goods companies, you think Heineken, you think Unilever, you think Nestlé, you think Coca-Cola, P&G as well. I tried to apply to P&G. I didn't make it. Luckily for me, as I speak to you today, I've gained experience across Unilever, Heineken, Nestle, Coca-Cola. One important nuance in my journey so far has been in the various organizations where I worked. I tried very well, very much to build good relationships as much as I can. I didn't always get it right, of course, because I'm not perfect. But in organizations where I built solid relationships, it usually opened the door to new opportunities. In 2020 was the year I actually wrote down the kinds of organizations where I want to work. Actually, before 2020, I always had a vision or a picture of the kinds of organizations where I want to work. I always had that picture in my mind that I want to become a global marketing executive. I want to manage large marketing budgets. I want to make an impact. But it was in 2020, I actually wrote it down. And I remember writing down three company names. I wrote down Coca-Cola, I wrote down Nestle, and I wrote down Unilever. Yes. And I think I was already at Unilever at that point, though. But from there, I started, networking, building my portfolio, delivering results, leveraging my personal brand, and I was able to get these opportunities. Coca-Cola specifically, something interesting happened to me before I joined Coca-Cola. While I was working at Unilever, on my way to work, I always pass the Coca-Cola office. And whenever I pass, I always say, this is my next, this is my next place of work, There were opportunities at Coca-Cola as well. I tried them. I tried up to 3 times before I could get the opportunity I had. But I want to tell you the story of what happened, something very pivotal that happened before I got my first opportunity to work at Coca-Cola. I was working at Unilever. My role, many people don't know, it was a contract role when I worked at Unilever. I was in the consumer insights team, but I wanted to pivot because marketing has various facets, right? Consumer insight is the more academic one, very rigorous, mentally rigorous, very analytical, right? There is creative marketing, there's brand management, there is integrated marketing, there is media and all of that. And I wanted an opportunity to further stretch me, right? I discovered a marketing school called Brand Management Academy, run by my mentor as well. He became my mentor after I went to the school, Dr. Abiodun Ajiborode. When I went to Brand Management Academy, it was a small school. We used to have like 20 to 30 candidates in a class. It was my first day at Brand Management Academy was life-changing. It was transforming. I felt like all that I needed to take my marketing career to the next level, I was going to get it. Because there is something about marketing, especially for early marketers, there is a lot you don't know, and it can be confusing. Like, how do I know what I need to know? What path do I need to take? What course do I need to take? There's a lot of confusion out there that, okay, you need to take this course. I don't want to mention names, but there are popular courses out there that people will still go through and they won't get the answer that they need. But when I went to BMA, it was transforming. It was end to end. Something I lacked before going into BMA was how to combine business acumen with marketing principles, because marketing principles can sometimes feel like out of this world, like dreaming, we're selling dreams. It's not concrete, unlike roles like finance or engineering, right? But at BMA, I was able to bring the creative side of marketing as well as the scientific side of marketing together. At BMA, I worked on a key project that helped me unlock one of my dreams, which was to work at Coca-Cola. So at BMA, the candidates there do not, they do practical, they launch a brand, right? So I launched a drink brand while I was there. I built the brand plan, I built a 5-year business plan and all of that. And that helped me to prepare for the next opportunity that came my way, which was at the Coca-Cola company. Even though at Coca-Cola, my initial job was not the core marketing I wanted, it was still inside, but I was able to stretch myself, ask for stretch assignments while I was there, and then took on some brand management responsibilities. I spent about a year and a few months, if I'm not mistaken, at Coca-Cola. And from there, I transitioned to Maggi. Maggi is Nestle's flagship brand in Nigeria. After Coca-Cola, I joined Nestle. I had an amazing manager at Nestle, Wando Ajene. Shout out to you. My experience at Nestle was really, really, really transforming. Nestle was a very different organization from where I was coming from. The company almost felt like they had family values. I mean it literally. I was working with a team where we could eat from the same plate. Of course, we're managing the Maggi brand, it's a food brand. We eat from the same plate. When it's your birthday, you are celebrated. It was really, really fun. And I grew a lot in my strategic marketing skills. I think one thing I want to mention, or I want to make sure I call out from my story so far, all the way from university up until now, is that I started my marketing career from a social media and digital marketing perspective. And I started growing, continuously learning at every stage. So at the point where I am now at Nestle, I've already worked across social media and digital marketing. I've worked across events management, project management. I've worked across consumer insights, the analytical side of marketing, especially in the consumer goods space. And here I was in core brand management. One of my key responsibility at Nestle was to launch a brand called Soya Chunks. It was a very different brand or a different product than what the organization had launched before. It really taxed me mentally, and it helped me to bring together a lot of the learnings that I had gained during the course of my journey, right? I had to combine psychological thinking with consumer behavior, with driving change. I had to learn how to sell internally before I tried to sell externally. I had to learn a lot about influencing without authority. I was just a manager, but there were senior managers, all over the country that I needed to convince to sell this new product that we're bringing to market. It was really, really tough, but the culture of the team was so amazing that it felt, the work felt so rewarding to do. While I was at Nestle, I also began to rethink. I had mentioned earlier that in 2020 was when I actually wrote down the names of certain companies that I wanted to work in. And while I was at Nestle, I revisited that list. I began to have aspirations of moving abroad, taking my career global, but when I looked around, most of the people that were moving abroad, they are the tech bros, people who work in software, engineering, DevOps. I had a friend who moved to the US because she was doing DevOps. But here am I in marketing and in consumer goods. Mind you, the consumer goods industry in Nigeria is still very, very traditional compared to a couple of countries in Africa, as well as a lot of developed countries. What do I mean? The trade dynamic in Nigeria is still largely open market and informal trade. So how do I take my experience of winning in open market and informal trade and take it to a market where 100% of the trade is modern trade? Say, for example, the UK. There's hardly anywhere you go to in the UK where you can have good prices. The prices are fixed. But in Nigeria, you will have good prices. So I had to start rethinking, asking myself, how do I, because my goal is to move abroad, take my career abroad, stretch my capability, of course, earn a higher income, be able to support my siblings, support a lot of aspirations and dreams that we have. A very good senior colleague had told me a couple of years back that I should look into fintech, but I had not really taken their advice in terms of implementing it. So it was in that moment I said, okay, I need to look into this fintech. What do I have now that will be useful to a fintech brand? With all the skills, with all the experiences that I've gained. And I thought, okay, my consumer insight experience is still important. My ability to build emotionally engaging, creative communication is still important. I still understand Nigerians. So I revisited my list of companies where I would like to work, and I started including tech companies. An interesting thing that happened after then is I included a particular tech company. I actually included MasterCard on my list, but it turned out that an opportunity at Visa opened up. And that taught me the value of also being flexible with my dreams and not being too fixed, right? I strongly believe in the saying that man proposes and God disposes. So for me, that list that I created was my prayer point. It's my proposal to God. And I trusted God to guide me, to order my steps and open the door to the right opportunity that I needed. So while I was at Nestlé, an opportunity opened up at Visa, and I received a recommendation from my mentor, Dr. Abiodun Ajiborode, because the company had reached out to him. He quickly recommended me. And then, of course, I worked hard, went through the entire process. I believe it was 4 interviews, if my memory serves me well. It was a tough one. I was able to craft my consumer goods experience in a way that speaks to the needs of a financial, technology brand. And I was very, very privileged. I was given the opportunity, and voila, I said, you know what? This is my opportunity to go to San Francisco. I'll do 1 or 2 years at Visa, and I'll find my way to San Francisco. When I was leaving Nestle, it was a very sad goodbye. It was a very, very sad goodbye. Another thing that influenced my decision making too was that an election had just happened, and the results of the election didn't sit well with me personally. So I told myself, Rukevwe, it's time to start paying attention to going global. It's time to start, don't be quote and unquote over patriotic that you stay in one place and become stagnant. If you ask me what my biggest fear is, it will probably be the fear of stagnation, the fear of not, making progress. And I felt that the outcome of that election is stagnation for the entire country for a couple of years. And I didn't want to be a part of that. So I was very privileged that this opportunity opened up, and I was given the opportunity. I transitioned from Nestle to Visa. I spent about a year and some months at Visa. Of course, while I was there were different opportunities that came knocking. In fact, I had to turn down another opportunity to go to Visa, actually, and I'm so glad, no regrets. I'm very, very happy that I made that decision. So I spent a year and a couple of months at Visa, and while I was there, the door opened for a new opportunity for me to relocate to the United Kingdom. My journey has really been transformative. It looks easy on the surface, but it's not easy at all. I faced a lot of obstacles. I faced a lot of naysayers as well as encouragers, during the course of my journey. I've been tagged a flight risk, changing up to like 4 companies in 5 years. And these 4 companies are companies that a lot of people admire. People tell me, Rukevwe, how come? How are you doing it? There is a chance that I'm probably one of the few Nigerians that has that record of working across those companies in that short span of time. It was people have said a couple of things to actually discourage me, saying, you're a flight risk. People cannot trust you. Why are you changing jobs up and down? But at the end of the day, I had to reflect and think about what they were saying to me, and I had to reframe it. I told myself, well, is it not better to be a flight risk than to be a stagnation risk? And the organizations that hired me, knowing where I was coming from, is it not because they saw value in what I bring to the table? So, where's the problem? I had to sit myself down and really ask myself, where's the problem? If you are being recommended to opportunities, should you say no because you do not want to be a flight risk? If you think 10 years from now, how would you feel about the decisions you made today? Would you be happy you turned down an opportunity just because of what people say? I had to give myself a lot of prep talk. And big shout out to one of my mentors, Dr. Abiodun Ajiborode, whose words of advice actually helped me, stay strong, because he's one of those people who encouraged me and told me that there is nothing like that. There is nothing like being a flight risk. Your career is yours. You are the CEO of your career. You are on the driving seat. You determine what you want and you go for it. You have to be a go-getter in the world we live in today. One of the biggest obstacles that I've faced during the course of my career was when I battled depression in, I think it was 2020, 2021, that COVID era, due to COVID, I transitioned from working in an office space, where there was psychological safety, to a virtual working environment where there was no psychological safety. For the first time in my career, I felt like I was the weak link in my team. Just imagine that. Imagine someone who was always among the top of the class all the way from secondary school to university. From primary school to secondary school. University was kind of rough. I was top of class, year 1, year 2, then dwindled all the way to 2-2. That's a story for another day. But that was my only failure, quote and unquote, up until COVID era, where I found myself in a team that it felt like I was the weak link. I wasn't performing as highly as my peers. And it was very shocking to me. I couldn't believe it. I was like, Rukevwe, who is this? Is this you? Is this the global marketing leader you envisioned failing in this high stakes organization that is known for hiring high performers? An organization where you go, you come out just because the name of that organization is on your CV, people will normally assume that you are the best of the best. How come? How are you failing? Why? What's going on? I struggled a lot mentally. I was depressed. I couldn't believe it. I spoke with a couple of friends, and one of them told me that, Rukevwe, I think what you are doing is you are not separating your personality from your work. You are putting your personality and your work together. I was like, I didn't understand. I was like, yes, now, but my work is a representation of me. My work has my stamp. When you see my work, you should remember me. You should know it's me. But after several conversations, I began to learn that no, my work is not me. My work is different from me. And work is never done. Work is never done. It's never perfect. There is always feedback. Something I wish I learned earlier during the course of my career was the value of building relationships in the workplace. Some people call it politics, right? So I like to say that I am more, in my orientation, I am more oriented towards my IQ than my EQ. So when I'm in the workplace, when I show up, my colleagues will usually tell you, Rukevwe is very smart, is highly intelligent, is all of that. But when that IQ is not wrapped in EQ, it can be abrasive to some people around you without you knowing, without it being your intention, right? So if there's anything I would have done, I would have loved to do differently earlier on in my career, is to wrap EQ around my IQ. One of the organizations where I really brought that to life in my journey was at Nestlé. And from Nestlé up until now, of course, I'm in a process of continuous learning, right? But ever since then, I've paid more attention to the emotion, reading the room, reading the emotions and leveraging it to my advantage and to drive, the agenda that I am being mandated to drive in the role where I'm serving. Yeah.
What does a typical day in your life look like now?
So a typical work day, I would use a work day. Say Tuesday, because I work remotely on Mondays and Fridays. Say Tuesday, I wake up in the morning. The first thing I like to do when I wake up in the morning is to read my Bible on my Bible app. So the verse of the day. Sometimes I'm not the most consistent person, so I don't want to put anybody under pressure. But at least that Bible verse of the day, I want to make sure it gets into my mind, it gets into my subconscious. There is a video and commentary and all of that. I read that, say a prayer, and then I start preparing for the day. Something I also love doing after my devotion is to reflect on my vision. So I've written down my vision, the things I want to accomplish, so help me God. I look at them in the morning, feed them into my soul, feed them into my spirit, so that consciousness drives me, for the rest of the day. Then I begin to prepare for work, the usual morning routine. You take your bath, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, and then take the train. I I I mean, coming from Lagos, we don't do trains in Lagos. But here, you have to, take the train. So I take the train, I go to the office. At the office, it's usually meetings, lunch, meetings, couple of work, block some time to make sure I do some productive work during the course of the day. Then I close, I return home. Of course, I live alone at the moment. So when I get back home, the agenda is rest, 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 and gist, gist, gist. So I rest, I make a couple of calls, I may be speaking to a friend or my siblings or my best friend who is still in Nigeria. We talk and then watch some movies.
If you had to pick a different Bible right now, today, what field would you choose?
I will still be in tech. I will just go deeper. I think I'll go deeper into artificial intelligence because everything points to the fact that AI is taking over, and I always like to be playing at the front line of innovation. So if I were to take a pivot, it will be to get deeper into AI. Of course, I would not say goodbye to my core, which is marketing. I would rather want a scenario where I can have a handshake between my marketing background and AI, right? So where is that sweet spot where marketing shakes hands with AI? It could be in terms of building marketing AI products, or in terms of driving initiatives to boost AI adoption among consumers, using marketing tactics and all of that. But I'm keeping my mind open. But since you asked, it is definitely AI.
Do you prefer to work remotely or work from the office?
I would exist at the intersection, a little bit of remote, a little bit of office. I like to spend some days really having silent time, focused work, remotely. And then there are days where I want to also make sure I'm in the office, build one-on-one connection with my colleagues. So I like to have a balance, if I can put it that way, of the two and not pick one over the other.
What would the younger self say if he saw you now?
My younger self will say, Rukevwe, you are living your African dream. Yes, and I believe my younger self will be proud of me, despite all the obstacles that are not public facing. The obstacles are never public facing. They are in secret. The public only sees the good news, the celebrations, the milestones, and all of that. So I believe my younger self will be proud of me and say, oh, Rukevwe, you are living your African dream. I think my younger self will also challenge me to do more, to give more to the community, to give back more, maybe more directly. I've been doing it more indirectly, working through other people, supporting causes behind the curtains. But maybe my younger self will challenge me to become more front-facing and more public-facing with, things that have to do with giving back to the community and helping other people succeed. Hi, I'm Rukevwe Toka, and this is the story of how I built a thriving career despite being tagged a flight risk.